Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Compact Garage. Today's episode, we're working on my budget buggy? I guess we could call this broke boy buggy. I don't know. If you guys got a name for it, leave it down in the comments. What we're going to do is put the brake pedal and gas pedal in this buggy. This assembly is off of an RZR 800, so obviously it will not bolt directly on, so we'll have to make some special brackets, and I assume we're probably going to have to cut this apart. I want to keep the parts, generic on this, so that if something does break, we can just go get one off the shelf. And a lot of you guys might be thinking, well, wasn't that already the case with the Interceptor? Like Carter Brothers built this buggy. There you go, you have off-the-shelf parts. Well, parts are very hard to find for this thing, and they're very expensive. This whole brake pedal assembly and gas pedal assembly was $23 on eBay. I can't make this for $23 with the material, time, money, the springs. Carter Brothers is way too expensive for the parts. I don't have the parts. I bought this as a strip frame. So that's what we're here. We're just gonna fabricate it, get something that looks good. Hopefully it's just as functional, and we'll go from there. So here's what we're working with. We want this somewhere in a position like this, but I had to make sure that my steering rack can go through there. So I'm gonna grab the steering rack real quick. We're gonna lay that in there and make sure we can get all these angles and everything to line up so that this thing could just be a bolt-in assembly. So here's the steering rack that I've chosen. It is a Ranger 500 steering rack, and it was cheap. And that's why I chose it over anything else, is because it was cheap. And that's what this whole entire build is about, is being cheap. And being able to just buy off-the-shelf parts. So I already made these brackets for this steering rack. So this whole assembly just bolts in nice and neat. So now we can see ideally where our steering rack needs to go. And preferably I want this to hug the driver's side here, because I do plan on keeping this a two-seater, but I don't want the steering rack to interfere with how the brakes operate. So I'm thinking we'll have to hug this a little high. I do have big feet, so this should be no problem. And I want to keep it back as far as possible. So we're probably somewhere in this area, right in here. So what I have here is just a little piece of scrap of metal that came off my CNC table. And if I hold this steering rack up at the angle where it'll intercept the steering column, that should clear right there. So what I'm gonna do, just clean this up a little bit, and I'm gonna tack weld this onto there so that I can make myself a little template to actually mount this in place. So here's the cardboard, and we got to cut out metal. So this will go right here like this. Something like that. This seat is a little high, but you can see how much deflection is in that plate there. So we'll have to build a gusset on that. All right, so with that gusset on there now, whenever we depress the brake pedal, that is a lot sturdier. Same thing with the gas pedal will deflect here. I will probably put a gusset this way to help support that. We'll just make a tab and then, you know, triangulate it this direction in order to hit the gas pedal, but that'll be later. The gas pedal will never have a whole lot of stress like the brake pedal potentially could, which is why this triangulated gusset is, you know, very sturdy. We welded that all the way out. So we're gonna go ahead and open up a package that I just got in the mail today, and I'm not sure if this is gonna work, but we're gonna give it a shot. All right, so here's what I got. It's a reverse gearbox, and it's not very big. I have no idea if it'll hold the power that we're trying to push through this, but I'm willing to give it a shot. So I'm not too happy with this gearbox. It seems tiny, it seems cheap, but if I'm gonna make something work, the gearbox has to sit here. There's not enough room. I have two engine plates here, and the reason I did that is because they're cheap. These were like 20 bucks a piece on eBay. They're 1/4 inch thick. They're already bent, they're already slotted. They make the most sense in my situation because I don't have a brake. I don't have a way of elongating the holes. I don't have a milling machine or anything. So to me, it makes sense, and it adds a ton of rigidity to the frame, which is what I'm looking for because I plan on abusing this thing. This gearbox, however, I don't think it's gonna hold at all. The shaft is not the right diameter for my secondary pulley for the CVT. It's not long enough for the splines on the end. This is going to take a lot of heavy modification in order to make it work. That's unfortunate. This thing was not cheap. It's going to have to live somewhere in here and probably raise up a little bit so that I could come down with a chain behind the CVT setup and hit my jack shaft that's going to come here from my CV axles. I'm not sure if this one is going to be well suited for this situation. It claims it can hold 14 horsepower, I believe, which would be fine if this engine was stock. If that's what they claim it'll hold, I imagine it probably might hold 20, maybe more. I'm definitely going to try it. I'm going to go ahead and mock this up, mount it, because, well, at this point I've already bought it. Might as well beat the heck out of it and give an honest review on it. And if it blows up, it's just a couple tabs, cut them off, put a new CVT, move the CVT system over, maybe lengthen or shorten the chain. It's not that big of a deal just to modify it later for another gearbox. So I'm going to move forward with this. However, I need to make some mounts for this gearbox. I need to make sure I know exactly where the engine is. I'm just mocking this engine up. As you can see, the side cover's not on it. It's just for mock-up purposes only. For now, I'm gonna have to figure out something that will work. The secondary is not that big. See, it will fit right here. I don't know if it'll fit between my CV axles. I do have to notch this bottom just a little bit for my CV axles to hit, you know, a bearing that goes right there, a carrier bearing. So this might work and be, you know, good enough. And the shorter the chain, the less chances there are for a whole lot of slack. I'm trying to get away without having to do a tensioner. However, worst case scenario, I could, you know, rock this in the mounts, or maybe make a tensioner later on that would come off of this. I'll figure something out, but for now, I'm gonna have to make some mounts to move this forward. So that'll be in the next video. We'll go ahead and get that mounted, get this gearbox mounted. There will be a video soon on building the engine. I do have parts on order. They have not arrived. I had some issues with supplies. I need valves, and I cannot acquire 34mm valves anywhere. I went ahead and bought two 38mm valves, and I'm gonna try to have the one cut down at the local machine shop to the 34mm. I do have a billet rod coming. I have a billet flywheel coming, and I'm trying to stick to the $500 budget that I promised you guys before. So that's gonna do it for part one of this buggy build. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys would name this. I specified that this is a budget build. How much of a budget, you might ask? I'm trying to do this for under $1,500 all in. I have budgeted $500 for the engine due to parts, as mentioned earlier. I don't know if I'm gonna hit that mark. I will be close. I will be between the $500 and $600 price range, but I'll be sure to definitely do a whole entire build video at the end of this where we break down the price the whole way along the way. If you guys are curious for now, the frame was $200 on Facebook Marketplace. I have nothing in the hole for front suspension other than those shocks, which were $80 on eBay. The front suspension came off of a donor quad that I had sitting around. It was junk. I ripped the front suspension off of it, made some tabs. There you go. The steering rack was $79. So we're sitting at close to $300 altogether. The rear suspension, the RZR, I found that on eBay for $140 for both upper and lower control arms, left and right side, the spindles, the brake calipers, and the rotors. It was a steal. And then I bought some CV axles for an RZR 500 off of eBay, very cheap. They were less than 100. I want to say they were close to 80. So right now, with most of the critical parts, we're sitting around $1,000. So we still have seats, we have a steering wheel, we have chains, we have jack shafts. It's gonna come in quick to that budget. And I'm gonna try to source these parts as cheap as possible. But at the end, I want something that's good quality. So there's some stuff that I can't just cheap out on. The billet flywheel for the engine is no exception. That is a safety concern. These flywheels will fly apart on these engines at higher RPM. We want to make a lot of RPM with this engine, 8,000, 8,500 RPM. So that's going to do it for part one on the budget buggy build. If you guys have any questions or comments about this build, make sure to leave a comment down below, as I read all of the comments left in the videos. And I personally reply to every single one. So until next time, guys, keep on wrenching.